Montana Territory, 1875. A group of settlers dragged Sarah Winchester to Crow's Lake in the dead of winter, determined to punish her for refusing an arranged marriage. As they pushed her toward the frozen water, wealthy cattle baron Luke McCall was riding home from a long drive. He heard her screams echo across the snow-covered valley. Without hesitation, he spurred his horse toward the commotion, arriving just as they threw her into the icy lake. Luke dove in after her, pulling her from death's grip, but saving her life was just the beginning. As dawn broke over the Montana wilderness, two strangers would forge a bond stronger than the forces trying to tear them apart. But what dark secrets drove these settlers to such desperate measures? And how far would they go to keep those secrets buried? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. A bitter wind whipped through the streets of Miller's Creek as Sarah Winchester hurried along the wooden sidewalk, clutching her mother's shawl tight around her shoulders. Behind her, whispers followed like autumn leaves, sharp and brittle. "Miss Winchester," Elder Thompson's voice cut through the morning air. "A moment of your time." Sarah's fingers instinctively went to her mother's gold ring worn on a chain beneath her dress. She turned, forcing her face into the pleasant mask she'd perfected over the past 10 years. "Elder Thompson?" She dipped her head respectfully, though her heart hammered against her ribs. The tall, severe man approached with measured steps, his silver pocket watch chain swinging with each movement. "The council has reached a decision." His voice carried the weight of assumed authority. "You'll marry James Blackwood come Sunday." Sarah's world tilted. I don't understand." "It's been 10 years since your mother's passing." Thompson's eyes narrowed. "You've refused every suitable match we've proposed." "The community needs stable families, Miss Winchester. Young women living alone." He paused, significance heavy in his tone. "It breeds talk." "My father's house is community property now," Thompson cut in. "Unless you can produce the deed your mother claimed existed." His lip curled slightly, the one she spoke of before her unfortunate accident. Sarah's throat tightened. The deed. Always the deed. Her mother's last words echoed in her memory. The proof is in the... But death had stolen the rest, leaving Sarah with only fragments of truth and a mystery she couldn't unravel. "I won't marry him." The words escaped before she could stop them. Thompson's face hardened. "This isn't a request, Miss Winchester. The council has spoken." "Sunday." He leaned closer, his voice dropping. "Don't make us question your mother's judgment in raising you. There are those who still wonder about her influences." Sarah's hand crept to the hidden medicine pouch beneath her. Shawl, her mother's last gift, filled with sacred herbs and wrapped in beaded leather that spoke of a heritage the settlers preferred to ignore. "My mother was a good woman," she whispered. "Your mother was what she was." Thompson straightened. "Sunday after services don't disappoint us." He strode away, leaving Sarah trembling in the cold morning air. She waited until he rounded the corner before ducking into the alley between the general store and the blacksmith's shop. Her fingers shook as she pulled out her mother's ring, studying the intricate design she'd memorized years ago. Curves and lines that seemed random to most eyes, but which her mother had once told her, held a map to the truth. "I won't let them," she whispered, touching the ring to her lips. "I promise." The rest of the day passed in a blur of preparations she had no intention of completing. Sarah moved through the motions of selecting fabric for a wedding dress she would never wear, all while her mind raced through possibilities of escape. But where could she go? The nearest town was a 3-day ride, and winter was settling in with a vengeance. As dusk approached, she returned to her small house on the outskirts of town, the home her father had built with his own hands, where her mother had filled every corner with love and secrets. Sarah lit the lamps and moved through the familiar rooms, touching worn furniture, tracing the patterns in the wooden walls where her height had been marked year after year. In her mother's old trunk, beneath layers of quilts and memories, she found what she was looking for, a small leather-bound journal, its pages filled with her mother's elegant script. Sarah had read it countless times, searching for clues. But tonight, something caught her eye, a passage she'd overlooked. The settlers fear what they don't understand, but the land remembers. The lake holds secrets deeper than its waters. The lake. Crow's Lake. Sarah's heart quickened. Her mother had often walked there, especially in the weeks before her death. Could the deed be hidden somewhere along its shores? A knock at the door startled her from her thoughts. Sarah quickly hid the journal and smoothed her skirts before opening the door to find Martha Blackwood, her soon-to-be mother-in-law, standing on her porch with a basket. Sarah, dear. Martha's smile didn't reach her eyes. I brought you some of my wedding preserves. Every bride should have something sweet to start her new life. Sarah accepted the basket, her thanks automatic and hollow. Martha pushed past her into the house, her sharp eyes taking in every detail. James is a good man, Martha said, running a finger along a dusty shelf. He'll provide well. Of course, you'll need to learn to keep a proper home. The criticism in her voice was clear, and will help you put aside some of your mother's more unusual ways. Sarah's grip tightened on the basket. My mother taught me everything I need to know about keeping a home. Did she? Now? Martha turned her face hard. Did she teach you about loyalty to your community? About knowing your place? She moved closer. About keeping secrets buried where they belong? In that moment, Sarah knew the council, the forced marriage, all of it. They weren't just trying to control her. They were trying to erase every trace of her mother's truth. After Martha left, Sarah waited until full dark. She packed a small bag with essentials, tucked her mother's journal inside her coat, and slipped out into the night. The wind had picked up, carrying the promise of snow, but she didn't feel the cold. Her mind was fixed on Crow's Lake, and whatever secrets it might hold, she never made it to the shore. The council chamber in the back of Miller's Creek Church held 12 men that evening, though only 5 would be remembered in the town records. Elder Thompson stood before the crackling fireplace, his shadow stretching long across the wooden floor like an accusing finger. She's been searching. Thompson's voice carried the weight of grave news. Martha found her mother's journal today. James Blackwood shifted in his chair, moonlight from the high window catching the silver cross pinned to his lapel. Then we move tonight before she finds it. And risk questions, rumors? Elder Roberts, the oldest among them, shook his head. We've maintained order here for 15 years, since we first settled this valley. Order built on lies, Reverend Shaw whispered, but only Thompson heard him. The young reverend was new to their circle, still uncertain about the weight of necessary sins. Thompson pulled a leather folder from his coat. The territorial governor's office has approved our petition. Once the marriage is recorded, all of Catherine Winchester's property transfers to her daughter's husband. He looked pointedly at James and threw him to the council's authority. If she agrees to marry. Reverend Shaw's voice was stronger now. She seemed quite determined this morning. She'll agree. James Blackwood's smile held no warmth, or she'll face the consequences of her mother's choices. The room fell silent, remembering another winter night 15 years ago, when Catherine Winchester had threatened to expose their carefully constructed lie. The accident that followed had been regrettable, but necessary. The land deeds? Roberts asked. Thompson patted the folder. Safe, and the territorial office has no record of Catherine Winchester's claims. As far as they're concerned, this valley was empty when we arrived. No natives, no prior claims. He turned to James. Once you're married, you'll sign these new documents. Everything will be legally binding. And if she's found something, James leaned forward. If her mother left her proof, then we'll handle it. Thompson's voice was ice, just like we handled Catherine. The Reverend stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. Surely, we're suggesting nothing. Thompson cut him off. We're protecting our community, our families, our futures. He moved to the window, looking out at the snow-covered street. Do you know what would happen if the truth came out? If people learned that this land was purchased with blood money, that the natives who died here weren't killed by disease, but by poison in the wells? God help us, the Reverend whispered. God helps those who help themselves. Thompson turned back to the room. Catherine Winchester's daughter has her mother's blood, her instincts. She'll never stop looking unless we stop her. James stood, straightening his coat. I'll gather some men. We'll catch her at the lake. The lake? Roberts asked. I had Martha mention it, planted the seed about her mother spending time there. James smiled again, cold and calculated. Sarah's predictable. She'll go looking for answers tonight. Thompson nodded. No witnesses. Make it look like an accident. A young woman distraught about her upcoming marriage walking on thin ice. What about the journal? The Reverend asked, his face pale. Destroy it. Destroy everything. Thompson's voice was final. By morning, Miller's Creek will mourn another tragic accident, and our secrets stay buried. The men filed out into the night, their decisions heavy in the air. Only Thompson and the Reverend remained. This is necessary, Thompson said, seeing the younger man's distress. Sometimes sin serves a greater purpose. "And what purpose is that?" Shaw asked. Thompson placed a hand on his shoulder. "Progress, Reverend. Civilization. The native girl Catherine Winchester married wasn't fit to raise a child in our community. Her daughter carries that same wild blood. Better to end it now than let it poison another generation." Outside, James Blackwood and 4 other men mounted their horses, rifle stocks gleaming in the moonlight. They turned toward Crow's Lake, where Sarah Winchester was about to learn the price of asking too many questions. Thompson watched them go, then carefully recorded the evening's meeting in the town ledger. But he wrote only 5 names, documenting a simple discussion about winter preparations and church repairs. The truth, like so many truths in Miller's Creek, would exist only in whispers and nightmares. The church bell tolled 9 times, each strike echoing across the valley like a hammer, driving nails into a coffin not yet built. Luke McCall urged his horse along the snow-dusted trail. The setting sun painted the Montana sky in shades of amber and blood. Behind him, the last wagon of his cattle drive creaked through the darkness, loaded with the profits of a successful season. 15 years of building his empire had taught him to trust his instincts, and tonight something felt wrong in the familiar valley. "Boss," Charlie Rodriguez, his trail foreman, rode up alongside. "Men are wondering why we're pushing through, instead of making camp." Luke's eyes scanned the horizon, taking in the distant lights of Miller's Creek. "Something's stirring, Charlie, can't you feel it?" Charlie, who'd ridden with Luke since they were both broke cowboys dreaming of their own spread, knew better than to question his boss's hunches. He'd seen those instincts save them from rustlers, blizzards, and worse. "Ramsey's gang?" Charlie asked, referring to the outlaws they'd heard about 2 towns back. Luke shook his head, absently touching the silver brand hanging from his watch. "Chain, his first cattle brand, now worn smooth from years of worry. Different kind of trouble, town trouble." They'd passed through Miller's Creek before, driving cattle to the northern territories. Luke had always sensed something off about the place. Too neat, too proper, like a wound hidden under clean bandages. "Remember that widow?" Luke asked. "The one with the herb garden about 10 years back? Catherine something. Helped Jake when the fever took him." Charlie crossed himself, remembering how the woman's medicines had saved one of their best hands. "Winchester, Catherine Winchester." Luke's voice was distant. "Next drive-through, they told us she died. Accident at the lake. Mighty convenient accident the way I heard it." Charlie kept his voice low. "She was asking questions about land rights, Indian claims." Luke nodded. He'd done his own asking. After that, quiet inquiries that led nowhere, but taught him plenty about Miller's Creek and its powerful council of elders. The town had grown rich too fast, its prosperity built on foundations that didn't quite add up. The trail wound down into the valley, and Luke's horse, a big bay named Thunder, suddenly tossed his head, nostrils flaring. Up ahead, riders were moving through the trees near Crow's Lake, their lanterns bobbing like malevolent fireflies. 5 men, Charlie murmured, his hand dropping to his gun. 6, Luke corrected, spotting another shadow moving through the darkness. "And one of them's following something or someone." He'd seen hunting parties before, for game, for outlaws, for runaway slaves in his Texas days. This had the same feel, predators pursuing prey. "Charlie, get the men settled at the north pasture. I'm gonna have a look." "Boss, just a look." Luke checked his rifle, then his revolver. "But if you hear trouble, we'll come running." Charlie wheeled his horse around but paused. "Luke, remember what my grandmother used to say about crow calls at night?" Luke smiled grimly. "Death riding on winter winds. Watch yourself, boss." Luke waited until Charlie was gone, then guided Thunder off the trail. The big horse moved silently through the snow, years of working cattle making him sure-footed, even in the treacherous footing. The moon broke through the clouds, and Luke caught a glimpse of a figure running between the trees. A woman, her dark hair streaming behind her like a banner. She was heading for the lake, probably thinking she could lose her pursuers along the shore. "Fool's choice?" Luke muttered. "The lake would be treacherous this time of year, its surface a patchwork of thick and thin ice." He'd seen what happened to cattle that trusted winter water. The woman stumbled, and Luke recognized her then. Catherine Winchester's daughter. He'd seen her in town on his last drive through, standing proud despite the whispers that followed her. Now she was running for her life, and Luke had a sick feeling. He knew why. Thunder sensed his tension and gathered himself, ready to run, but Luke held him back. Years of experience telling him to wait, to watch, to understand the situation before rushing in. The riders were spreading out, herding the woman toward the lake's edge. Their leader sat his horse like a man used to being obeyed, moonlight glinting off a silver cross at his throat. "Nowhere left to run, Sarah," the man called, his voice carrying across the snow. "Best make this easy on yourself." Luke had heard enough. He turned Thunder toward the lake, keeping to the shadows. Whatever was happening here, it wouldn't end in another convenient accident. Not tonight. A scream split the darkness. Terror and defiance mixed in equal measure. Luke dug his heels into Thunder's flanks, and the big horse leaped forward, hooves throwing up plumes of snow as they raced toward the sound of a life about to be broken or saved. Sarah's feet hit the ice first, then her knees, the impact shooting pain through her body. Behind her, boots crunched on the frozen surface of Crow's Lake. Rough hands seized her arms, dragging her upright. Your mother made the same choice. James Blackwood's voice was close to her ear, running to the lake looking for proof that never existed. She found it, didn't she? Sarah twisted in his grip. That's why you killed her. The slap echoed across the ice. Sarah tasted blood, but she smiled through it. Truth hurts, James. Get her to the deep part, Thompson ordered from the shore. Make it look right. The ice groaned beneath their feet as they dragged her forward. Sarah clutched her mother's journal inside her coat, knowing it would sink with her. Maybe someone would find it in spring when the ice melted. Maybe then the truth would. The first gunshot split the night like thunder. That's far enough. A voice she didn't know, deep and steady as stone. Sarah turned her head. A rider sat at the lake's edge, his rifle aimed at James. The moon caught his face. Strong features, eyes hard as Montana winters. "This doesn't concern you, stranger," Thompson called. "Town business." "Murder's everybody's business," the rider said. The stranger dismounted smoothly, keeping his rifle trained on the group. "Let her go," James laughed. But Sarah felt his grip tighten. "You're outnumbered, friend. Ride on." "Luke McCall," the stranger said, taking a step onto the ice. "I own the Double M Ranch north of here, and I've got 20 cowboys just over that ridge who will be mighty interested in seeing justice done." Sarah felt the men's hesitation. The Double M was the largest spread in the territory. Luke McCall's name carried weight. "She's a murderer," Thompson tried. "Killed her own mother." "Funny." McCall took another step. The ice creaked. "I remember Catherine Winchester. Remember how she died too? Remember a lot of things about this town that don't add up, James?" One of the other men whispered, "Maybe we should." Everything happened at once. James shoved Sarah away, reaching for his gun. She slid across the ice as rifles barked in the darkness. Something hot sprayed her face. Blood from one of James's men, caught by McCall's bullet. Then the ice gave way. The crack was like a rifle shot. Sarah felt the surface tip beneath her, heard screams and splashing. Cold water punched the air from her lungs as she plunged into the lake. Darkness, silence. Her mother's journal slipped from her numb fingers, disappearing into the black depths. Sarah clawed for the surface, but couldn't find the hole she'd fallen through. The cold was like knives in her chest. Something grabbed her coat, a hand strong and sure. She was pulled upward back into the freezing air. Luke McCall's face appeared above her, his arm locked around her waist as he dragged them both toward solid ice. "Breathe," he ordered. "Stay with me." More gunshots, screaming. Sarah saw James and his men scrambling across the ice, leaving their wounded behind. Thompson's voice rose above the chaos. "The council will hear about this, McCall." "Make sure they do," Luke shouted back. He pulled Sarah onto firm ice, shrugging out of his heavy coat to wrap around her shoulders. "Tell them Luke McCall's taken an interest in Miller's Creek. Tell them things are going to change." Sarah's teeth chattered so hard she could barely speak. "The journal. My mother's lost now." Luke lifted her easily, carrying her toward his horse. But maybe not the only copy. Where she stared up at him through ice-crusted lashes. "Why? Why did you help me?" she asked. "Met your mother once. Good woman. Helped my people." He settled her on his horse, mounting behind her. "Besides, I've got a problem with folks who think drowning's a solution to anything. They'll come after me again." Sarah huddled into his coat, aware of his solid warmth at her back. "The council, they have proof of what they did, hidden in the church," she said. "Then we'll find it." Luke turned his horse toward the north, where lights were appearing, his cowboys riding in. "But first, we're getting you warm." Charlie, the foreman, appeared out of the darkness, leading a string of horses. "Boss, we heard." He broke off, seeing Sarah. "Madre de Dios, get some men into town," Luke ordered. "Watch the church. Nobody goes in or out tonight." He looked down at Sarah. "Think you can ride?" She straightened, drawing on some deep reserve of strength. Try to stop me. Luke's laugh was soft and approving. Ma'am, I don't think anyone could stop you if they tried. He raised his voice to the gathering cowboys. Mount up. We're riding to the double. They thundered away from Crow's Lake, leaving James Blackwood's wounded man to be collected by his friends. Sarah looked back once, seeing lanterns moving around the ice hole where she'd nearly died. They killed her there, she said softly. My mother. She found proof of what they'd done to the native people, how they stole the land. They caught her at the lake, and now they tried the same with you. Luke's voice was grim. Question is, what are you going to do about it? Sarah touched the empty space where her mother's journal had been. I am going to finish what she started, with or without proof. Not alone, Luke said quietly. Not anymore. They rode on through the night toward the Double M Ranch and whatever tomorrow would bring. Behind them, the moon caught the ice of Crow's Lake, making it shine like polished silver or the blade of a knife waiting to cut through lies long buried in Montana snow. The Double M Ranch house rose out of the darkness like a ship emerging from fog, a sprawling two-story structure built of solid timber and determination. Light spilled from every window and smoke curled from 3 stone chimneys into the winter sky. Maria, Luke called as they approached. Got a guest needing warm blankets and hot coffee. The front door burst open, spilling more light onto the snow. A stout Mexican woman in her 50s hurried down the porch steps, her dark eyes taking in Sarah's wet clothes and pale face. Dios mío, inside quickly! She hustled them through the door, already shouting rapid Spanish to unseen servants. Charlie sent word, the bath is ready. Sarah found herself whisked upstairs to a large bedroom where a copper tub steamed by the fireplace. Maria efficiently helped her out of her frozen clothes, clucking at her blue-tinged skin. I'm Maria Rodriguez, Charlie's mother, she explained, wrapping Sarah in a warm robe. The patron. He's a good man. You're safe here. Sarah sank into the hot water, feeling returning to her limbs in painful waves. Thank you. Rest now. I'll bring you something to wear and hot soup. Maria paused at the door. That medicine pouch around your neck. It's native work. Sarah's hand flew to her throat, finding the small leather bag still there. My mother's. I thought I'd lost it in the lake. Maria smiled. Some things refuse to be lost, senorita. Like truth, like justice. She touched a similar pouch hanging beneath her own shawl. My grandmother was Yaqui. She taught me that bridges exist between all peoples if we're brave enough to cross them. After Maria left, Sarah examined her mother's pouch in the firelight. The beadwork was intricate, telling a story she'd never fully understood until now. The pattern matched the one on her mother's ring, the one she'd thought was just decoration. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Miss Winchester, Luke's voice. There's soup when you're ready, and we need to talk. A moment, please. She dried. Quickly and dressed in the clothes Maria had left. A warm wool skirt and fitted blouse that somehow matched her perfectly. When she opened the door, Luke stood waiting in the hallway, his own wet clothes replaced by clean ranch wear. Better? He asked, studying her face. Warmer, at least. She followed him downstairs to a large study where a fire roared and soup steamed in bowls on a low table. Sit. Luke gestured to a comfortable chair. You've had quite a night. Sarah sank into the chair, accepting the bowl he offered. Why did you help me? Luke settled across from her, stretching his long legs toward the fire. Told you, knew your mother, there's more. He nodded slowly. Been watching Miller's Creek for years. Towns built on stolen land and buried secrets. Your mother was close to exposing it all. The journal wasn't the only proof, was it? Sarah touched her mother's medicine pouch. The patterns, they're a map. Smart woman, your mother knew they'd look for papers, documents, so she hid the truth another way. Luke leaned forward. Question is, do you want to finish what she started? Could be dangerous. Sarah met his gaze. They killed my mother, tried to kill me, stole land that belonged to my people. Yes, I know about my grandmother. The medicine pouch wasn't my mother's first. Figured that out, did you? My mother taught me to see what others try to hide. Sarah set down her soup bowl. But I'll need help. The council has money, power, connections, and I have more. Luke's voice was quiet but firm. Plus, 20 loyal cowboys who don't take kindly to men who drown a woman in a frozen lake. Why would you risk your ranch, your reputation? Because some things matter more than cattle or money. He stood moving to his desk. From a drawer, he withdrew a faded photograph. Your mother didn't just help my ranch hand that time. She saved my sister's life too. Jenny, she'd married a man from Miller's Creek, started asking questions about native land claims, had an accident at Crow's Lake 3 months after your mother died. Sarah's breath caught. I'm sorry. Been waiting for a chance to set things right. Luke handed her the photograph, a young woman with his same determined eyes. Jenny would have liked you. She believed, like your mother, that the truth always finds its way to light. A commotion outside interrupted them. Charlie burst into the study, snow dusting his shoulders. Riders coming from town, he reported. Thompson and the council members, about 15 men. Luke stood. Time to choose, Miss Winchester. Run or stand and fight. Sarah rose, squaring her shoulders. My mother chose to fight, so do I. Good. Luke's smile was fierce and approving. Charlie, get the men ready. Tonight we teach Miller's Creek that some secrets won't stay buried. Through the study window, Sarah watched torches approaching across the snow-covered valley. But for the first time since her mother's death, she felt no fear, only a deep, burning certainty that justice, too long delayed, was finally riding in on the winter wind. Luke's men assembled on the ranch house porch, rifles gleaming in the torchlight. Sarah watched from the study window as Thompson and his riders approached, their horses' hooves crunching in the fresh snow. Thompson's no fool, Luke said, checking his revolver. He wouldn't ride out here unless he thought he held a winning hand. He does. Sarah turned from the window. The territorial office, the deeds, everything's legal on paper. Papers can lie. Luke holstered his gun. Truth's what matters. Thompson's voice carried across the yard. McCall, send out the Winchester woman and we'll overlook tonight's unpleasantness. Luke moved to the front door, Sarah close behind him. On the porch, Charlie and his men parted to let them through. Luke stepped into the torchlight, his shadow stretching long across the snow. That's close enough, Thompson. The council leader reined in his horse. Behind him, James Blackwood's face was twisted with barely contained rage, a bandage visible beneath his collar where Luke's bullet had grazed him. This is none of your concern, McCall, Thompson called. The girl's a murderer, killed her own mother. Like my sister killed herself, Luke's voice carried clearly in the cold air. Funny how accidents keep happening at that lake. Thompson's face hardened. Jenny McCall's death was tragic. Jenny McCall's death was murder. Luke cut him off, just like Catherine Winchester's, just like you planned for Sarah tonight. You have no proof, don't I? Luke nodded to Charlie, who disappeared into the house. 15 years of watching, gathering evidence, waiting for the right moment. Charlie returned carrying a stack of papers. Luke took them, holding them up for Thompson to see. Bank records, land transfers, letters that never quite got burned. He smiled grimly. My sister was thorough before you killed her. Left everything with me. Sarah saw Thompson's confidence waver for the first time. Those papers are worthless. Maybe, maybe not. Luke pulled out a single yellow document. This is interesting. A receipt from the territorial governor's office dated 15 years ago. Payment for processing land claims signed by you, Thompson, and witnessed by a Native American tribal elder. Impossible, Thompson breathed. We destroyed all copies. Not all. Sarah stepped forward, understanding flooding through her. My mother's medicine pouch, the beadwork pattern. It's not just a map. It's a copy of that receipt, isn't it? Luke nodded. Your mother was clever and knew they'd search for papers, so she hid the truth another way, in plain sight. Lies. James Blackwood spurred his horse forward. All lies. Truth hurts, doesn't it, James? Sarah's voice was still like ice. When you found out your father was helping my mother gather evidence, is that why he had an accident too? James's face went white. Thompson rounded on him. What is she talking about? Tell them, James. Sarah pressed her advantage. Tell them how your father discovered what really happened to the native people who lived here. The poisoned wells, the forged documents. Tell them how you found his letters to my mother and realized he was going to expose everything. Shut up! James drew his gun, but Luke was faster. The ranch rifles hammered back in unison, covering every rider. Easy now. Luke's voice was deadly calm. Wouldn't want any more accidents. Thompson raised his hand slowly. What do you want, McCall? Justice, truth, everything this town's been burying for 15 years. Luke handed the papers to Charlie. These are copies. Originals are already on their way to the territorial marshal's office. By morning, every bank and land office in Montana will know what really happened here. You'll destroy everything we built, Thompson protested. You destroyed it yourself, Sarah said quietly. When you chose greed over humanity, when you murdered innocent people to hide your crimes. The land was empty, Thompson began. The land was my grandmother's, Sarah cut him off, and her people's before that. The wells you poisoned, they drank from them for generations. The graves you built your church over, their ancestors slept there. A murmur ran through Thompson's men. Some began to back their horses away. Times are changing, Thompson, Luke said. Truth's coming to light all over the territory. Native claims being recognized, crimes being exposed. He stepped closer to Sarah. Question is, do you want to face justice now or wait for the marshal to drag you out? Thompson looked at his dwindling supporters, then back at the ring of rifles. Slowly, he dismounted. The council will fight this, he warned. Let them. Sarah touched her mother's medicine pouch. Some fights are worth having. As Thompson's men turned their horses toward town, Sarah felt Luke's hand brush hers. She looked up to find him watching her with something more than admiration in his eyes. Your mother would be proud, he said softly. She'd be proud of both of us, Sarah replied, thinking of Jenny McCall and all the others who died seeking truth. But it's not over yet, is it? Luke shook his head. No, Thompson's right. The council will fight, and there are more secrets to uncover. Good thing we make a strong team then. His smile warmed something deep inside her. Good thing indeed, Miss Winchester. Good thing indeed. Dawn broke over the Double M Ranch, painting the snow-covered plains in shades of rose and gold. Sarah stood on the porch, her mother's medicine pouch open in her hands. In the early light, the beadwork pattern seemed to shift and change, revealing new secrets with each passing moment. Breakfast ready, Luke said behind her. Maria's made enough to feed an army. I think we might need one. Sarah handed him a piece of paper that had been delivered before sunrise. This came from town. Luke unfolded the note, his jaw tightening as he read. The message was simple. The council offers one last chance. Return to Miller's Creek by sundown or forfeit all claims to Winchester property. They're bluffing, Luke said, but his hand brushed his gun belt. Are they? Sarah pointed to the distant road where dust marked the approach of riders. That's the third group this morning. Luke nodded to Charlie, who was already mounting up with 2 other men to investigate. Thompson's gathering support from other settlements, trying to show force. It's not just that. Sarah followed him inside, where Maria was laying out plates of eggs, bacon, and fresh biscuits. Look at this. She spread out her mother's medicine pouch on the table, carefully tracing the beaded patterns. Each design tells part of the story. The poisoned wells here, the stolen graves here. But this, she pointed to a complex spiral of blue and white beads. This shows more land deals, not just in Miller's Creek, but all through the territory. Luke leaned close, his shoulder warm against hers. Thompson's council has friends in high places, powerful friends who won't want their secrets exposed. Sarah looked up, finding his face inches from hers. For a moment, neither spoke. Maria cleared her throat pointedly. Coffee's getting cold. They stepped apart, but something had shifted between them, like ice breaking up on a spring river. Before either could speak, Charlie burst through the door. Riders coming in hot, boss, he hesitated. They're burning the south pasture. Luke was moving before Charlie finished speaking. From the porch, they could see smoke rising against the morning sky. Men on horseback rode through the grass with torches, setting fires to drive Luke's cattle into a stampede. Get the men mounted, Luke ordered. We need to... A shot cracked across the yard. Splinters flew from the porch rail near Sarah's hand. She ducked as Luke pulled her down, more bullets whining overhead. Back inside. Luke's voice competed with gunfire. Charlie, return fire. Cover the north approach. They scrambled into the house as windows shattered. Maria was already moving, gathering essentials into a bag with practiced efficiency. The cellar, she said firmly. Now. In the relative safety below ground, Sarah could hear the fight raging above. Luke paced like a caged mountain lion, pausing only to check his ammunition. They're not just trying to scare us off, Sarah said. This is different. Yeah, Luke's voice was grim. Thompson's desperate, which means he's afraid. Sarah pulled out her mother's journal, saved from the lake. The pages were water damaged, but some entries were still legible. Listen to this. Thompson fears exposure more than death. The graves weren't empty. When they built the church, the witnesses weren't all silenced. Witnesses? Luke stopped pacing. My grandmother's people. The survivors. Sarah's eyes widened. That's what the spiral pattern means. It's not showing land deals. It's showing escape routes. Places where people fled, carrying proof of what happened. Another explosion rocked the house above them. Maria muttered a prayer in Spanish. Thompson knows, Sarah continued, excitement gutting through her fear. If we can find these survivors, we'll have living proof of what they did. Luke knelt beside her, studying the pattern. But first, we have to survive the day. Charlie's voice carried down from above. Boss, territorial marshals coming. 5 riders flying the government flag. Luke and Sarah shared a look. The marshal could mean help or disaster depending on whose side he took. Time to choose, Luke said softly. We can stay hidden. Let the marshal handle this his way. Sarah stood squaring her shoulders. My mother didn't hide, neither will I. Luke's smile was fierce and proud. I was hoping you'd say that. He checked his gun belt. Show what just is really wondering. He touched her mother's medicine pouch, feeling the strength of generations flowing through the beaded patterns. You said and meant it with every fiber of your being. They climbed the cellar stairs together, emerging into a world of smoke and chaos. But Sarah wasn't afraid. For the first time since her mother's death, she knew exactly where she stood and who she stood with. Territorial Marshal Wade Bennett sat his horse in the Double M smoke-filled yard, 5 deputies flanking him. The morning sun caught his silver badge as he surveyed the scene. Burning pastures, bullet-riddled walls, armed men on all sides. Quite a situation you've got here, McCall, he drawled. Luke emerged from the house first, hands carefully away from his guns. Sarah followed, her mother's medicine pouch visible at her throat. The marshal's eyes fixed on it, something flickering in his weathered face. Thompson's men attacked my ranch, Luke said. Burning pastures, shooting at women. That's so. Bennett dismounted slowly. What? And I suppose it has nothing to do with these accusations you're spreading, these papers you've been sending to my office. Sarah stepped forward. Those papers tell the truth about Miller's Creek, about murdered innocents and stolen land. Miss Winchester, Bennett nodded to her. Your mother made similar claims as I recall before they killed her. Proof's what matters in law, Bennett said, not stories. Then let me show you proof. Sarah held out her mother's medicine pouch. Every bead here tells a story. Every pattern maps a crime. And I know where to find the survivors who can testify. The marshal stiffened. Survivors? My grandmother's people. The ones who escaped the poisoned wells. The ones who saw what Thompson and his council did. Sarah's voice carried across the yard. The ones your office chose to ignore 15 years ago. Bennett's deputies exchanged uneasy looks. The marshal's hands strayed to his gun belt, then dropped away. That's a serious accusation, miss. I've got more. Luke pulled out a leather folder. Land deeds, bank transfers, including payments to the territorial office for convenient oversights. Bennett's face darkened. You're playing a dangerous game, McCall. Not playing at all, Marshal. Luke's voice was steel. I've got copies of everything in safe hands. Anything happens to us, it all goes public. Every name, every bribe, every murder. A tense silence fell. In the distance, the south pasture still burned, smoke twisting against the morning sky like tortured spirits. Bennett swung back onto his horse. I'll need to see these survivors, hear their testimony first. Sarah said, you're going to arrest Thompson and his men before more accidents happen at Crow's Lake. The marshal studied her for a long moment. You're as stubborn as your mother. I'll take that as a compliment. It wasn't meant as one. Bennett sighed heavily. Catherine Winchester was right about one thing, though. This territory is changing. Old ways, they don't work anymore. He turned to his deputies. Ride into Miller's Creek. Bring in Thompson and the council members. Do it quiet if you can, but do it. As the deputies rode out, Bennett looked back at Sarah. Your grandmother? She was Blackfeet. Yes, I knew her before it all went wrong. He touched his badge. Wore this 15 years trying to keep peace. Sometimes peace costs too much. It cost my mother her life, Sarah said quietly. And my sister, Luke added. Bennett nodded slowly. Maybe it's time to balance those accounts. He gestured to the medicine pouch. Show me these patterns. Tell me about these survivors. Inside the ranch house, Sarah spread her mother's beadwork on the table. Luke stood close behind her as she traced the intricate designs. "Here," she said, "these blue spirals show mountain caves where people hid. White crosses mark massacre sites. Red lines..." She paused. "Red lines are escape routes to Canada where some still live. 3 days ride." Bennett mused. "If they'd testify..." "They will," Sarah said. Her fingers found a pattern she hadn't noticed before. "Look, this isn't just a map, it's a timeline. Dates worked into the beads. The day Thompson became council leader. The day the wells were poisoned. The day they started building on the burial grounds." Luke leaned closer, his breath warm on her neck. "Clever woman, your mother." "Too clever," Bennett said grimly. "It got her killed." "No!" Sarah turned to face them both. "Their crimes got her, killed their greed, their fear of the truth." She touched the beadwork gently. "Mother knew what she was risking. She left this for me because she believed justice would come." "Justice comes in its own time," Bennett said. "Question is, are you ready for what it brings?" Thompson's friends won't go quietly. Some foundations need shaking. Luke's hand found Sarah's warm and strong. Some truths need telling. Bennett's weathered face showed a hint of approval. "Then let's hear them. All of them." He spread a map on the table. "Show me where these survivors are." But first, he fixed them both with a hard stare. "Tell me everything from the beginning, every detail." Sarah squeezed Luke's hand, drawing strength from his presence. Then she began to speak, unraveling 15 years of lies, one bead, one truth at a time. Dawn painted the eastern sky as Sarah stood at Luke's study window, watching Marshal Bennett's men escort Thompson and 3 council members toward Miller's Creek jail. Luke's ranch hands had contained the pasture fire, though the acrid smell of smoke still hung in the air. "Tea?" Luke appeared beside her, offering a steaming cup. "Your Maria spoils me." Sarah accepted it gratefully, breathing in the familiar scent of herbs. "She uses the same blends my mother did, mountain sage and wildflower honey." Luke smiled. "Some traditions cross all boundaries." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the sunrise. Sarah was acutely aware of his presence, the quiet strength that seemed to fill any room he occupied. "I've been thinking," Luke said finally, "and about what comes next. The survivor's testimony." "Not that." Luke set his own cup down, turning to face her. "About you. About us." Sarah's heart stuttered. "Luke, hear me out." He took her hands in his rough palms, warm against her skin. "Thompson's men will be looking for revenge. The council's friends won't stop just because we've made arrests. You'll need protection." "I can protect myself." "I know." His thumbs traced circles on her wrists. "That's one of the things I admire about you, but there's more than just protection to consider." From his pocket, he withdrew a small silver ring, worn smooth with age. "This was my mother's. Before that, it belonged to my grandmother. Simple women who built something lasting in this hard country." Sarah's breath caught. "Luke, are you..." "Marriage would give you legal standing," he said practically, but his eyes were tender. "The courts respect a wife's testimony more than a single woman's, and combined, our properties would be harder to challenge." "Very sensible," Sarah murmured, biting a smile. Luke's face softened. "Nothing sensible about how I feel when I look at you, when I see your courage, your fire." He took a deep breath. "I know it's sudden. We've known each other barely 2 days, but sometimes you just know." Sarah touched the ring, feeling its history. "Like my mother knew my father. They only knew each other a week before they married, and they were happy." "Very." Sarah looked up at him. "Until the council's greed destroyed everything. Then let's rebuild." Luke's voice was gentle but firm. "Not justice for the past, but something new, something stronger." Outside, horses nickered in the early morning light. From the kitchen came the sounds of Maria starting breakfast, the comfortable rhythms of ranch life continuing despite all that had happened. "The council will say you only want my land," Sarah said softly. "Let them." Luke's free hand cupped her cheek. "We know the truth." Sarah studied his face, the honest eyes, the smile lines that spoke of laughter despite life's hardships. In 2 days, he'd risked everything to help her, not for land or profit, but because it was right. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, yes, I'll marry you." She smiled through sudden tears, for all the sensible reasons and the not-so-sensible ones too. Luke slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her close. Their first kiss tasted of tea and promise, of endings and beginnings twined together like beads on a string. A throat cleared in the doorway. They turned to find Maria watching them, her eyes bright with approval and unshed tears. "Breakfast is ready," she announced, "and Charlie brings news from town." Luke kept his arm around Sarah's waist. "Good news or bad?" "Both, maybe." Maria's expression turned serious. "Thompson's escaped." Sarah's hand went to her mother's medicine pouch. "How?" "Help from outside," Charlie said, appearing behind Maria. "Professional men by the looks of it. Killed 2 of the marshal's deputies." Luke's arm tightened protectively. "Bennett's organizing a search, but boss..." Charlie hesitated. "They left a message. Said they're riding for the caves where the survivors are." Sarah's blood ran cold. After all they'd uncovered, after coming so far, how long to reach the caves? 3 days hard ride, Charlie replied. "Then we'd better get started." Luke looked down at Sarah. "Ready for a wedding journey, future Mrs. McCall?" Despite everything, Sarah found herself smiling. "As long as it includes bringing Thompson to justice. I wouldn't have it any other way." Luke turned to Maria. "How fast can you organize a wedding?" The older woman was already moving. "Give me an hour, Charlie. Fetch the preacher and send 2 men to watch the North Trail." As the house erupted into activity, Luke pulled Sarah close again. Not exactly the quiet ceremony most brides dream of. "I'm not most brides." Sarah touched his cheek. "And this isn't most marriages." "No," Luke agreed, his eyes shining with pride and something deeper. "This is justice and love, all wrapped up together, just like those beads of yours. Beauty hiding strength." Sarah kissed him again, brief but fierce. "Then let's get married, catch some criminals, and save my grandmother's people in that order." Luke's laugh was warm and free. "Yes, ma'am, whatever the lady desires." The next hour passed in a whirlwind of activity at the Double M. Sarah stood in Maria's room, wearing a borrowed dress of deep blue wool as the older woman pinned up her hair, with trembling fingers. "My own wedding day," Maria murmured. I shook like an aspen leaf. "But you," she met Sarah's eyes in the mirror. "You have the look of a warrior." "I'm scared," Sarah admitted, "not of marrying Luke, but of what comes after." Maria nodded, securing another pin. "Good. Fear keeps us sharp." She touched the medicine pouch at Sarah's throat. "But you carry strength here. Your mother's strength. Your grandmother's." A knock at the door interrupted them. "Come," Maria called. Reverend Shaw entered, his young face troubled. Sarah tensed, but he raised his hands peacefully. "I'm not here to stop anything," he said quickly. "I've come to help." "Why?" Sarah demanded. "Because I was wrong." He pulled a folded paper from his coat. This was in the church records, a real deed showing the land's original ownership. I should have spoken up sooner." Sarah took the document with unsteady hands. "You're risking everything by showing us this." "Some risks are worth taking." Shaw straightened. "I'll perform the ceremony, and then, if you'll have me, I'd like to ride with you to the caves. Those people deserve justice." Before Sarah could respond, Charlie burst in. "Riders coming, but it's all right," he added quickly. "It's Running Wolf's band." Sarah hurried to the window. Sure enough, a group of mounted Blackfeet warriors approached the ranch, led by a tall man whose presence commanded attention even at a distance. "My grandmother's brother," she breathed. "But how?" "I sent word," Maria said simply. "Some bonds are never broken." Luke met the riders in the yard, his posture respectful but unafraid. Running Wolf dismounted, his dark eyes taking in the burned pasture and bullet-scarred walls before settling on Sarah as she emerged from the house. "Sister's daughter," he greeted her in English. "Your mother's spirit rides the wind today." "Uncle," Sarah fought tears as he embraced her. "I never knew. There was much hidden, much lost." He held her at arm's length, but not all, not everything. More riders appeared on the horizon, Marshal Bennett returning with his remaining deputies, and behind them, to Sarah's shock, several prominent ranchers from neighboring spreads. "Word travels fast," Luke said, joining them. "Seems Thompson's made enemies everywhere." Bennett dismounted, nodding to Running Wolf. "It's been a long time, old friend." "Too long." Running Wolf's face was grave. "The wounds are deep, but healing starts today," Sarah said firmly. "We go home now." She looked at Luke. "If you still want to marry me with all this chaos?" His smile was answer enough, but his words made her heart soar. chaos is what brought us together. Might as well make it official. The ceremony was unlike any Miller's Creek had ever seen. Blackfeet warriors stood alongside white ranchers as Reverend Shaw spoke the traditional words. Maria wept openly while Charlie beamed with pride. Marshall Bennett and Running Wolf stood as witnesses, bridging a divide that had seemed uncrossable just days before. When Luke slipped his mother's ring onto her finger, Sarah added her own token, a beaded band she'd swiftly woven that morning, incorporating her mother's patterns of truth and justice. Two traditions, Running Wolf approved. Two strengths joined, but there was no time for celebration. As soon as the ceremony ended, preparations for the journey began. Maps were spread out, supplies gathered, strategies formed. Thompson's got a day's head start, Bennett reported, but he's pushing hard, leaving a trail. He'll break for the pass here, Running Wolf indicated, where the caves open to the north. How many survivors? Luke asked. Enough. Running Wolf's eyes held ancient pain. Enough to bury our dead twice over. Sarah studied her mother's beadwork. The pattern shows a hidden valley beyond the caves. That's where they are? Her uncle nodded. The old ones, the witnesses, they've waited 15 years for this day. Then let's not keep them waiting, Luke said. He turned to the gathered allies, native warriors, white lawmen, ranchers, and reformed men of God. Anyone who rides with us should know this won't be easy. Thompson's got hired guns and powerful friends. He's also got innocent blood on his hands, Bennett added, native and white alike. Running Wolf mounted his horse. Blood calls for justice. One by one, the others mounted up. Sarah felt the weight of history as Luke helped her onto her horse. Not just her mother's story now, but a larger tale of wrongs being righted, of truth breaking free from long imprisonment. Ready? Luke asked, swinging into his own saddle. Sarah touched her mother's medicine pouch, then the ring that marked her new life. Together, she said, as they rode out from the Double M. The morning sun caught the beadwork at her throat, sending fragments of light dancing across the snow like scattered gems, or like justice finally breaking through the dark. The late morning sun caught the snow in diamond sparkles as the wedding party gathered in the Double M's main room. Maria had transformed the space with evergreen boughs and ribbon, their fresh scent mixing with coffee and wood smoke. Sarah stood by the fireplace in her blue wool dress, now adorned with a ceremonial Blackfeet sash that Running Wolf had presented her. Your grandmother wore this at her wedding, he explained softly, before the troubles came. Luke appeared at her side, handsome, in a clean black coat. His eyes widened at the sight of her, and Sarah felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the crackling fire. You look like a queen, he murmured. A warrior queen, Charlie added from nearby, earning appreciative nods from the Blackfeet warriors. Marshall Bennett shifted uncomfortably, not to rush things, but Thompson's getting further ahead every minute. Let him run, Running Wolf said calmly. The spirits of those he killed ride with us. Justice has patience. Reverend Shaw stepped forward, Bible in hand. Shall we begin? The ceremony was brief but meaningful. Shaw spoke of unity bridging divides, of love conquering hatred. When he reached the traditional vows, Sarah and Luke added their own promises. I pledge not just my heart, Luke said, but my strength in your fight for justice. And I pledge, Sarah responded, not just my love, but my trust in building something new from the ashes of the old. As Shaw pronounced them husband and wife, a commotion erupted outside. Charlie drew his gun, but it was only Maria's youngest son, Miguel, racing in from his watch position. Riders coming, he reported. The celebration instantly shifted to battle readiness. But when Luke stepped onto the porch, rifle ready, he laughed in surprise. Well, I'll be damned. A wagon approached, driven by Martha Blackwood of all people. Behind her rode several women from Miller's Creek, including wives of council members. They carried baskets and parcels. Put those guns down, Martha called. Out, we're here for the wedding. Sarah joined Luke on the porch, stunned. Mrs. Blackwood? The older woman climbed down, her face worn but determined. My husband and son chose their path. I'm choosing mine. She hefted a basket. Brought your wedding feast, though it seems we're a mite late for the ceremony. Other women followed, bearing food and small gifts. One carried a quilt made from patches of fabric Sarah recognized from her mother's sewing basket. We saved these, the woman explained softly. When they... When they cleared your mother's house, it wasn't right what they did. None of it was right. Marshal Bennett watched the scene with shrewd eyes. Thompson's lost his grip on the town, Maria said, helping unload the wagon. Seems like the women always knew. We always know, Maria added. Martha approached Sarah, holding something wrapped in cloth. This was your mother's. James took it the night she died, but I kept it safe. She unveiled a beautiful beaded bracelet. Thought you should have it for your wedding day. Sarah's fingers trembled as she touched the beadwork. The pattern matched her mother's medicine pouch. Another piece of the hidden truth. Thank you, she whispered. Luke's arm slipped around her waist. Seems justice takes many forms. The wedding feast that followed was unlike anything Miller's Creek had ever seen. Blackfoot warriors shared coffee with ranchers' wives. Marshal Bennett's deputies swapped stories with Charlie's vaqueros. Martha Blackwood and Maria exchanged recipes, bridging cultures through the simple act of breaking bread. But underneath the celebration ran a current of tension. Every rider's approach brought hands to weapons. Every sudden sound turned heads. They all knew Thompson was out there, racing toward the caves, toward innocent lives. Running Wolf appeared at Sarah's side as she studied her mother's bracelet. The pattern, he said quietly. You see it? Yes. The beadwork showed a different part of the story. Names, dates, locations she hadn't known. More proof, more truth. He corrected her. Truth that must be protected. He looked meaningfully at the gathered townspeople. Not all enemies wear guns. Some carry whispers, spread lies. You'll need these allies in the days ahead. Luke joined them, his face serious. Sun's westering. We should ride soon. Sarah nodded. But first, I'll approach Martha Blackwood. Will you help when we bring the truth to light? The older woman straightened her spine. Time I stood for something more than fear and lies. We all will. She gestured to the other women. Miller's Creek needs healing as much as justice. And let's find both, Sarah said. The wedding party transformed into a war council. Maps were spread on the dining table between plates of Martha's roast beef and Maria's tamales. Bennett's deputies detailed Thompson's trail, while Running Wolf's warriors identified secret paths through the mountains. Sarah stood with her new husband, watching their unlikely alliance take shape. Luke's hand found hers, warm and strong. Not exactly a traditional wedding day, he said. Sarah touched her mother's bracelet, then her grandmother's sash. No, she agreed. It's better. It's real. Around them, the future of Miller's Creek was changing like winter, giving way to spring. But first, they had a long ride ahead and lives to save. The mountain pass loomed ahead, a natural gateway cut through towering walls of rock. 3 days of hard riding had brought them here, following Thompson's trail through increasingly treacherous terrain. Snow lay deep in the shadowed places, and the wind carried winter's bite. Tracks split here, Running Wolf announced, studying the ground. 3 riders broke east. Thompson and the rest continued north. Luke reined in beside Sarah. Trying to confuse us? No. Sarah pointed to her mother's beadwork. They're heading for the other entrance. See, the pattern shows 2 paths to the caves. Marshal Bennett rode up, his badge catching the weak sunlight. Then we split up too. Running Wolf, take your warriors east. McCall, you and your men ride with me north. Mrs. McCall goes north, Luke and Sarah said together. Bennett smiled slightly. Figured as much. They separated quickly with practiced efficiency. Running Wolf touched his niece's shoulder before riding out. Your mother's spirit guides us, he said softly. We'll find you at the caves. The northern trail grew steeper, winding through stands of pine and bare-branched aspen. Sarah rode close to Luke, every sense alert. Something felt wrong about the silence. Marshal, Luke called softly. You smell that? Bennett nodded grimly. Wood smoke. They crested a rise and saw it, a thin spiral of smoke rising from a sheltered hollow. 2 horses were tied in the trees, but there was no sign of their riders. Trap, Charlie muttered. Spring it anyway, Bennett decided, but careful like. Charlie, take 3 men wide around the east. Mrs. McCall, you and Luke. A rifle cracked. Bennett's horse reared as bark exploded from a tree trunk inches from his head. More shots followed as hidden gunmen opened fire from the rocks above. Cover, Luke shouted, pulling Sarah behind a fallen log as bullets kicked up snow around them. Charlie's men returned fire, forcing some of Thompson's ambushes to duck back. Sarah counted at least 6 shooters, maybe more. We need to reach those rocks, Bennett called from behind a tree. Can't cross that open ground, Luke replied. They've got us pinned. Sarah studied the terrain, then pulled out her mother's medicine pouch. The beadwork showed this very pass and something else. "There's a way," she said. "Mother marked it." A narrow trail there. She pointed to a seemingly solid rock face behind that stand of pine. Luke squinted through the gunfire. "You sure?" "Trust the beads," Sarah said. "They haven't been wrong yet." Bennett nodded to two of his deputies. "Work your way over there. Rest of us will keep their attention here." The deputies belly crawled through the snow while the others maintained covering fire. Sarah held her breath as they reached the pines, then disappeared behind them. Minutes stretched like hours. The gunfire continued, neither side gaining an advantage. Then suddenly shots erupted from above the ambushers' position. Thompson's men, caught between two fires, began to break. "Now!" Bennett shouted. They surged forward. Sarah saw Luke take down one gunman with a clean shot. Charlie's men emerged from their flanking position, cutting off escape routes. Within moments, it was over. "Thompson?" Luke asked as they secured the area. "The survivors?" One of the captured men spat blood from a split lip. "Long gone. You're too late anyway. How many men with him?" Bennett demanded. "Enough." The man sneered. "Them Indians won't know what hit them." Sarah stepped forward, her mother's bracelet glinting. "You're wrong. They've known for 15 years. Known and waited and prepared." "Search them," Luke ordered, "then tie them to their horses. Marshal, if you could spare a deputy to take them." "Back already planning on it." Bennett turned to the prisoners. "You'll face territorial justice for this. Murder of lawmen, among other things." One of the captured men looked at Sarah with something like fear. "You're her daughter, ain't you? Catherine Winchester's girl." "I am." She tried to keep her voice steady. "She tried to warn us. You know, said the land would remember. Said truth can't stay buried forever." He shuddered. "Should have listened." "Yes," Sarah said quietly. "You should have." As Bennett's deputy led the prisoners away, they regrouped quickly. The shooting had cost them valuable time. "Thompson's got maybe 3 hours on us," Luke calculated. "Less?" Sarah corrected, studying the beadwork. "The caves have defenders. They'll slow him down." "Your grandmother's people?" Charlie asked. Sarah nodded. "And others. All the ones who escaped, who survived to testify." She looked at Luke. "We need to hurry." "You heard my wife," Luke told the men. "Mount up. We're riding hard to finish this." They rode hard through the afternoon, following a trail that grew clearer with each mile. Thompson was no longer trying to hide his passage, either confidence or desperation driving him to speed over stealth. As the sun settled toward the western peaks, they heard it, a single rifle shot echoing off the cliffs. Then another and another. "The caves," Sarah whispered. Luke's face was grim. "Let's finish this." They spurred their horses forward, racing against darkness and destiny toward a confrontation 15 years in the making. Dusk painted the cliffs in shades of purple and gold as they approached the caves. The gunfire had stopped, leaving an eerie silence broken only by their horses' labored breathing. There, Sarah pointed to a narrow valley ahead. "The entrance is hidden behind that rockfall." Luke studied the terrain with experienced eyes. "Thompson's men will have high ground positions." "Charlie's already on it, boss." The foreman signaled to his men, who began spreading out along the ridgeline. Marshal Bennett drew alongside them. Running Wolf should be approaching from the east by now. A bird call echoed through the valley. Not quite natural, not quite right. "That's him," Sarah said, recognizing her uncle's signal. Luke raised his arm, and an answering call came from Charlie's men. The pieces were in place, but something still felt wrong. "Too quiet," Bennett muttered as if in answer. A voice called out from the rocks. "That's far enough." Thompson stepped into view on a ledge above the cave entrance. He held a rifle casually, but his face showed the strain of 3 days of hard riding. "Miss Winchester," he called, or should I say, Mrs. McCall now. "Congratulations on your wedding." Thompson stepped into view on a ledge above the cave entrance. He held a rifle casually, but his face showed the strain of 3 days of hard riding. "Miss Winchester," he called, or should I say, Mrs. McCall now. "Congratulations on your wedding." "It's over, Thompson," Luke shouted back. "We have your men. The marshal has evidence. Surrender now." "Evidence?" Thompson laughed harshly. "I have evidence too. 15 years of dirty secrets. Every important man in the territory has something to hide. You really think they'll let you expose it all?" "We already have," Sarah replied. "While you were running, we were sending telegrams to newspapers, to governors, to Washington itself. By now, everyone knows about Miller's Creek." Thompson's composure cracked slightly. "You're bluffing, like you bluffed about my mother's death being an accident." Sarah touched her beaded bracelet. The truth was here all along, woven into every pattern. Names, dates, places, everything she discovered preserved in plain sight. Movement caught her eye, shadows shifting among the rocks. Running Wolf's warriors were getting into position. Your hired guns are captured or dead, Bennett added. Give it up. Dead! Thompson's smile was ugly. Like these witnesses you're so eager to find. Sarah's heart stopped. What did you do? Nothing yet, but I have men in the caves. One signal from me. He raised his arm. An arrow hissed through the air, taking Thompson's hat clean off his head. He ducked instinctively and chaos erupted. Running Wolf's warriors emerged from hiding, their rifles covering the cave entrance. Charlie's men appeared on the opposite ridge. Thompson was surrounded, but he still held that terrible smile. Kill me, he called, and my men will execute the hostages. No one's killing anyone, Luke said firmly. He turned to Sarah. The beadwork. Does it show another way in? Sarah studied the patterns frantically. Yes, there's a back entrance through the high canyon. Charlie, Luke beckoned his foreman. Take 4 men, and a shot rang out from the caves. Then another. Screams echoed from within. Your witnesses are dying, Miss Winchester, Thompson shouted. Just like your mother. Sarah spurred her horse forward before anyone could stop her. Luke called her name, but she was already halfway to the cave entrance. Stop, she yelled. I have what you really want. Thompson's rifle trained on her. And what's that? The original deed, the one proving you never owned the land. She pulled her mother's medicine pouch free. It's been here all along, sewn into the lining. Sarah, no! Luke's voice was anguished, but she kept riding, holding the pouch high. Thompson's eyes fixed on it greedily. Bring it to me, he ordered. Slowly, Sarah guided her horse carefully up the narrow trail to his position. Behind her, she heard Luke and Bennett arguing in fierce whispers. Running Wolf's warriors held their positions. Arrows knocked. That's right, Thompson said as she approached. Nice and easy. She reached the ledge and dismounted, holding out the pouch. Thompson snatched it with his free hand, never taking the rifle off her. 15 years, he muttered. 15 years of building something great and you destroy it all for what? Ghost stories and Indian trinkets? For justice, Sarah said quietly. Thompson ripped open the pouch's lining. Paper spilled out, but Montana Territory, 1875. The story begins with Sarah Winchester, a young woman living in Miller's Creek, who was dragged to Crow's Lake by a group of settlers after refusing an arranged marriage. As they try to throw her into the frozen lake, she is saved by Luke McCall, a wealthy cattle baron riding through the valley. Luke's act of heroism marks the beginning of a significant connection between him and Sarah, as both are drawn into the dark history of Miller's Creek. The settlers' resentment towards Sarah stems from her mother's legacy, as Catherine Winchester had discovered dark secrets about the land and the settlers' involvement in the exploitation and genocide of Native Americans. Catherine had kept records of this truth, including a mysterious deed to the land that could expose the settlers' crimes. Before Sarah's mother could reveal the truth, she mysteriously died in what was made to appear as an accident at Crow's Lake. Sarah's struggle against the council's control intensifies as they force her into an arranged marriage with James Blackwood, but she refuses, determined to uncover the truth about her mother's death. The medicine pouch her mother gave her becomes a key to understanding the secrets of the land. As Sarah digs deeper, she realizes that the settlers' prosperity was built on blood money, the land they had stolen from the native people, and the deaths they caused through poisoned wells and land grabs. Luke McCall becomes Sarah's ally in her quest for justice. He had known Sarah's mother and respected her deeply for her wisdom and courage. And now, after saving Sarah, he is committed to helping her expose the truth. His wealth and power give Sarah the support she needs to challenge the council and the settlers, but he also has his own motivations tied to a deep mistrust of the council and the secrets they've kept hidden for so long. Luke's connection to the land and his own personal loss make him a fierce ally to Sarah. As Sarah's investigation deepens, Elder Thompson, the leader of the town council, tries to stop her from uncovering the truth. He and the other settlers are determined to bury the past and protect their control over the land. Martha Blackwood, Sarah's soon-to-be mother-in-law, becomes an unexpected ally. ally. Initially a symbol of the settlers' tradition and dominance, Martha slowly begins to see the injustice of the council's actions and decides to help Sarah. This shift in Martha's character represents a breaking down of the walls between the settlers and the truth they had been hiding. Sarah discovers that her mother's beaded ring and medicine pouch contained not only a map to the land's secrets, but a legacy of resistance that tied her to the Native American heritage. Crow's Lake plays a central role as a symbol of the land's buried truths. It is here that Sarah believes the crucial deed might be hidden. The lake, which once represented death, now becomes a site of rebirth and justice. In a climactic confrontation at Crow's Lake, Sarah and Luke face the full force of the settlers' power. Thompson, leading a group of men, tries to stop Sarah from reaching the deed and uncovering the truth about the settlers' crimes. The struggle culminates in a battle for justice, where the settlers' dark past is finally exposed. Sarah and Luke are able to bring the truth to light, revealing how the settlers murdered and deceived to claim the land. Thompson's power crumbles and the town begins to change. With the truth revealed, Sarah and Luke become leaders of the reconstruction of Miller's Creek. The town is renamed Two Rivers Junction, a symbol of the unification between the settlers and the Native American survivors. The land that once symbolized greed and violence becomes a site of healing and justice. Sarah's journey to reclaim her mother's legacy ends with the creation of the Catherine Winchester Memorial School, a place where both settler and Native American children can learn the truth about the past and work together for a better future. As Sarah prepares to marry Luke, she discovers that she is pregnant, symbolizing the new generation that will live in a community built on justice and truth. The truth about her mother's death and the crimes of the settlers is finally uncovered and acknowledged, bringing the story full circle. The land that was once tainted by violence and lies now becomes a place of hope, where the wounds of the past are healed, and a new beginning is possible. The story concludes with Sarah's victory, not just for herself, but for the Native American people whose voices had been silenced for so long. As she and Luke look toward the future, they are filled with a sense of purpose and commitment to justice for the oppressed. The community of Two Rivers Junction stands as a testament to the power of truth, love, and unity.